So it's been 2 years now since I started my Eurorack journey. As you can see, a lot has changed and things got a bit out of control. But I want to share a few thoughts and show you a few of the new modules I got. And as always, we will make some sounds. The music and the sounds are the most important. So let's start with the most obvious, the case itself. I started with the IntelliGel 7U case. This one here, which I still use from time to time, just building different setups to experiment with. I have still the rack brute, which I use quite a lot, and I also use it outside building a patch and recording it out in nature. But I got now the Moog case. It's a bit bigger and it doesn't have built-in power, so I can use the Poly and Anywhere module. I was lucky enough to find one. They don't make it anymore, so I can fill up this case with some modules and take it out with me. Now, after a while, I felt that the 7U case was just not enough. I mean, I use also VCV-Rack, so I can fill in the gaps with VCV, but I wanted more. I wanted the ability to experiment more without the need to sit in front of a screen, so I decided to get a bigger case. Now, this is not a bad case, but I'm not 100% happy with it. It's mostly my fault, to be honest. This is the case from MDLR, the 13U version. Again, it's not a bad case, but there are a few things that I don't like so much. First of all, it doesn't have enough power. It has 4000 mAh for the positive 12 volts and 2500 mAh for the negative. Just for comparison, the IntelliGel case has 3000 mAh for both positive and negative, and it's only 7U. This is something I knew, of course, before I got it, so it's my fault and not MDLR's fault, but still, it's quite annoying. And now I got the MicroZeus power module, so I can have more power for the ES9, for example, which is quite hungry. Of course, if you have mostly analog modules, 4000 mAh should be more than enough, but if you are looking for a bigger case, make sure it offers enough power. By the way, I could easily just get another IntelliGel 7U case and connect them together, but actually I really never used the MIDI and audio connections built in the case, so I didn't see any reason to get another one. So anyway, the lack of power is my main issue with this case. Again, this is my fault, but there are other things that I find a bit disappointing, like the €1 is a bit wonky, and the rails overall are a bit of a challenge to align, so I always need extra time and nerves to get modules in place. Maybe it's the same for other big cases, but in this case the rails are cut at different points, so aligning them is not so easy. Again, if you are looking for a bigger case, check to see if the rails are one piece or they are split. By the way, with both the IntelliGel case and the rack brute, I had no issues with the rails, and they are both really good quality cases. Another thing about the €1, it's really uncomfortable to have it on the upper part of the case. If you are getting a bigger case with the €1, make sure it's somewhere in the middle of the case, because it's really not fun patching things from the lower part through the €1 here up. And actually, I received an email from MDLR right after making the order that it might take some extra time for the case to be ready because they built it from scratch. So I wrote them back if it's possible to have the €1 in the middle of the case and not on top. I was willing also to pay extra for that, but I never heard back from them, and the case just appeared one day at my home. I heard that a few people had issues with MDLR, but there are many people who use their cases and are really happy with them, so I'm not so sure what to think. But anyway, let's start looking at some of the modules that I got. This is how my case looked like last year. I sold two modules, the Qubit Nebula and the 2HP Freeze. There was a short time when I was really in love with the Nebula, but most of the time I just couldn't connect with it and decided to sell it. And the same with the 2HP Freeze, I just didn't use it so much, so I decided to sell it as well, but everything else stayed. So let's really go through some highlights. First of all, I just want to mention that I still don't have any dedicated VCAs. There are a few VCA-like functions here and there, like the mix control on the Mimeophone and the Morphogene, or the built-in VCAs in the Freak filters, but no dedicated VCAs yet. Now there are three modules that really opened up my system and made it more modular in a way. Those are the Voltage Block, Rampage, and the MOOC slicer. They add so much to a system and can be used in so many different ways. I'm really happy I added them to my setup. It was really worth it getting a bigger case just to have them in. Another module that I'm really happy with is Planer 2 from IntelliGel. It can record the movement, it can be used as a macro controller, a mixer, a panner. It's really a beautiful module to have. I added also a few more looping possibilities, so I got the looper from Instruo. It's such a versatile module, reminds me a bit of Morphogene in the sense that I can change the playback, start and length. I got also the DLD from 4MS, which is a delay basically, but can also work great as a looper and also for carpless strong patching. And I recently got also the sample drum from Erica Synths, amazing module for live performances, but also for generative patches. I got also a few more voices, so the TSL and Psych from Instruo. The TSL is beautiful sounding oscillator and very small. I can mix the different waves, switch between them. It also works as an LFO and it tracks and stays in tune very well. Psych is perfect for those lush super saw voices, but also for ambient with its built-in chords and intervals. And I got Plets, which I have to be honest, I was not so sure about at first because I didn't really like the sound in VCV, but the hardware version is so good, it sounds full and round. And I actually got it so I can take it in my smaller case for patching outside together with the Instruo Scion, so I can use plants and such to generate CV outside. Another module that I'm really in love with is the Desmodus Versio. It's here, you cannot really see it at the moment. Such a beautiful reverb and very performance oriented, so it's fun to tweak and play with. I also got the Imitor Versio, which is a delay, but it's harder to control. Still, it can add nice textures to any sound. And I got the new beads, which I enjoy, but there are a couple of things that I don't really understand, like the auto leveling. So as soon as you connect something to the inputs, it will set the levels. This might sound helpful, but in reality it's quite annoying, especially in live situations. And it will also switch to wavetable mode if nothing is connected to the input, so it will output a wavetable. Again, this might sound helpful, but not really practical in live situations. And also, unlike Arbor from Instruo that uses the recorded material as a wavetable, which makes sense, Beats will generate wavetables that it has built in. But again, it's a nice module all in all. I want to mention a few more modules before we start with some sounds. First of all, the Mordex data. I finally got one and I really enjoy it, not only for the scope, but also for the tuner and the internal oscillators and clock divider. The clock divider is really helpful also for generative patches. I will also mention, of course, Oct, that every system should have. It just adds so much movement to any patch. I got another filter from Vult, the Vogue filter. This one is analog, it's small and it sounds amazing. And another addition is Branches that I wanted for a long time for adding variation to the patch, and it's also great for generative patching. There are a few more modules, but let's start with some sounds. So here I'm using Rampage as my main clock. I have the left side of it cycling, and I'm using the rising output, which is basically a gate coming out as long as this side of Rampage is in the rise section, in the rise segment. And this is clocking the MOOC slicer, but I'm sending the MOOC slicer back out of the common output to the fall CV input. So with each step we get a different fall time, which means that with each step the clock is also a bit different and we get this wonky rhythm. I hope you can see here the lights on MOOC slicer. You can see that each step has a different length. And now this is clocking the voltage block. So I'm generating a sequence from the voltage block. The voltage block has a built-in quantizer, but in this case I'm using Harmonic from Instruo. It has also an attenuator for the CV input, so I can adjust the level of the voltage, the incoming voltage. And I'm using one output to sequence the TSL. And I'm sending two waves, the pulse wave and the fold wave, to planar to the A and B inputs. And from the A and B output, it's going to a stereo filter here on Freak with some modulation from Oct. which means that now with planar I can bring in those voices. If I go to A, it will bring in the left side. If I go to B, it will bring in the B side, the right side, like this. Right, so like this I can bring in the voices. I can also record the sequence if I want, or record the movement of the joystick here. Right, and now it will just play it as a loop. And now from the filter, I'm using this Modus Versio to add some space. So let's start adding a bit of... So here I'm using the Mimiophone as a voice. As I mentioned before, I don't have any dedicated VCAs, but the Mimiophone has a mix control with the CV input, so basically it's a sort of a VCA. And I'm using Harmonic to play this voice. It has a performance mode, and I can use the keyboard to play the different voices. In this case, again, it's the Mimiophone, and I'm using the gate output of Harmonic to open an envelope. This one is size, also from Instruo, that I also got. It has CV inputs for each stage and also gate outputs for each stage. Really interesting module. In this case, I'm using it just as a simple envelope to open the mix control on the Mimiophone. This is going to the DLD, so basically I can play this voice and loop it with the dual looping delay. Just like this, and the dual looping delay also has send and return for each channel, so a feedback loop which is going to freak, so I can do something like this. And loop it. And now it will keep on looping. And now this is going, you can hear already the overdrive or the distortion added. This is going to another module that I got, Guillotine, the 1U distortion from Ritual Electronics. Such a beautiful, beautiful module. It's a stereo distortion, and so it's going there, and from there it's going to beats. So if I bring in beats now, and I can add also some reverb. And now I can add some distortion. Each channel of the distortion here has 3 different colors. Here I have a loop I recorded with plats on the looper from Instruo, and it's going through the Modus Versio. I can bring it in. This is the loop. It will just play it back over and over again in this case, but I can record what's playing on the right side of the looper to the left side without patching anything, and then mangle it on the left side. So I'll just start recording a bit. So now it recorded this short segment to the left deck, and the left deck will play a one-shot loop that I can re-trigger either with this button. By the way, it's playing this recording backwards an octave down also. Or I can use a trigger to trigger it, so I'm using the clock output of Moog Slicer through branches, so I can add probability to this trigger, and now I can bring it in a bit. Now every now and then it will trigger this loop. Now I have another channel of branches triggering also the sample drum, so I also recorded plats to the sample drum, a few notes, and it has a really cool feature that it can splice the sample automatically, so it will add splice markers, and I have it set to that it will trigger the simple slices randomly, so it will jump from one slice to another, and it will play it back also. So if I add some probability here with branches, by the way, the left deck of the looper is going through beats for some reverb, and the sample drum is going to the emitter versio for some interesting delay lines. So here I'm using the Mordex data as my main clock. You can set the BPM, in this case it's 135. It has 4 clock outputs. Each clock has either a clock multiplication or a clock division. I'm using it to drive the voltage block, which is sequencing the basimilus through the harmonic, and the basimilus is going through the Vorg filter from Volt, again analog filter from Volt, from there to the DLD, for some interest to the sound, some nice delays, and it's going through some distortion. It will sound like this. I'm also using the voltage block to sequence the decay of the basimilus. The voltage block and the basimilus, they are working really nicely together. Another voice I have coming from Psych is going through another module from Instruo, a Hero or a Thero, which is a wave folder. And it has also a ping input, so you can ping it. This is what I'm doing here. I'm using the all gates output from Moog Slicer, but I'm using the common output to sequence the gates and ratchets. So some steps have no gates, and you will hear it in a second when I bring it in. So you can hear there is a sequence going because I'm using the sequence itself of the Moog Slicer to sequence the gates, and this is going through freak and some reverb with the Desmodus versio. And another voice, I have another voice. I'm mixing the TSL with the planar, so I'm just mixing 3 waveforms, sending the mix out to another freak. In this case, I'm using also the built-in VCA of freak, and I'm opening it, the VCA, with size. Now, what's gating size is this. I have the end of cycle output of the Moog Slicer going through another module from Ritual Instruments, Ritual Electronics, sorry, a switch, a 1U 2-channel switch. So I'm using the switch here as sort of a divider. I'm dividing the end of output, the end of cycle output, and this is gating size. So this is another voice, and this is also going again through the filter. And this is going after the filter is going to the mimeophone. So there's lots of fun, as you can see, lots of fun to be had with this system. There is one module I didn't mention, and that's the ST mix from Befaco, which is a great mixer for CV and audio. I got it so I can use it outside when I record outside, but I also use it every once in a while also here in the case, because again it's stereo. There's 4 channels and also an auxiliary channel that I can use, so really helpful. And that's it. That was more or less the overview. I hope you enjoyed this video, and cheers!